I think everyone who's watching this video is probably already familiar with the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, but for anyone who has not heard it or needs a reminder, to summarize, it's a story about a king who is approached by some garment makers who offer to make him a beautiful new robe, a new outfit out of this novel material, which is absolutely wonderful and beautiful to the people who can see it, but it'll be completely invisible to anyone who is a fool, an idiot. Anyone not intelligent enough to see it will see nothing at all. And since the king can't see any of the samples that they're presenting to him, he is very embarrassed and feels that he must be a fool and doesn't want to admit it. So he asks these garment makers to make this robe for him out of this sample, because he's too embarrassed to admit that he can't see it, and he ends up wearing this non-existent robe out into the streets. He's just completely naked, and since everyone in the kingdom has been told that only fools will not be able to see this garment, they all go along with the pretense as well. That every person who sees this naked old man pretends that they can see the beautiful clothes that he's wearing, and no one wants to admit that then they can't see anything because they don't want to appear to be a fool. I think this is a very memorable story because it hits on a very human characteristic, which is that people don't want to appear stupid, and they want others to think of them as smart, and they want to be smart as well. People want to be seen as intelligent. I think that most people also want to be intelligent as well. It's not enough just to be seen as that, but when we feel our own foolishness is apparent to others, it's very embarrassing. These days it's very common to hear about virtue signaling, which is the act of trying to appear virtuous to others. That's usually in reference to morality, trying to look like a moral, ethical person, but I think it actually is almost as prevalent, or maybe even more prevalent, in the sense of trying to appear intelligent to others. You could call it intelligence signaling, but then intelligence is itself a virtue, so you could kind of just say virtue signaling and it would mean the same thing. I think it's notable that the guy who wrote the Emperor's New Clothes didn't write it about a garment that could only be seen by moral people, and who, a garment that would be invisible to evil people. He wrote it about the pretense of being intelligent, but when he could have, the story would have worked just as well with immoral people not being able to see the material. But maybe Hans Christian Andersen agreed with me that it's more human to try to appear intelligent than it is to try to appear moral. As with many personal failings, it's much easier to identify this behaviour in other people, especially people we don't like, than it is to identify this sort of behaviour in ourselves. But there's a slightly more subtle aspect to the Emperor's New Clothes story that I think is equally insightful about human nature, and that's the way that people in the story copy other people. When they see other people pretending to see the king's clothes, when you see someone else saying how beautiful the king looks in his new clothes, it makes those people who are listening want to say it as well. It's not just that they're afraid to look foolish, but they're afraid to be the first person to look foolish. They copy each other in this story to some extent. I think it's very common for people who are trying to appear intelligent to just copy intelligent things they've heard other people say. Things that either someone who they think is smart has said, or they hear something that sounds smart. And it's quite easy to just repeat things in that way. You hear something clever and then you think, oh, that person who said that must be quite clever. And then you notice your own reaction to that and think, maybe I can elicit that reaction in others if I say that. If I say that, I'll sound like the smart person. And it's actually a pretty effective strategy at sounding smart. The thing that I've been thinking about, that I'm sort of struggling with, is that it's not just a way of sounding smart, but that is, in a sense, the way that you acquire knowledge and wisdom, is to listen to other people who are smarter than you, or who have thought about a subject more than you have. For most people, for the vast majority of people, on the vast majority of subjects, it's impossible to start from first principles and do your own research in every facet of the subject in order to become an expert. Even people who are very intelligent, who are very educated in a certain subject, are only educated in that very small field, and are, even though they may be intelligent, they probably don't know that much about other fields of study, and they just need to do what everyone else is doing and just sort of listen to the person who sounds like they know what they're talking about. And that led me to the question of, what is it about someone that makes other people think they're smart? Or, to put it in a more specific way, what are the attributes of the quintessentially, stereotypically smart person, intellectual, someone very wise or knowledgeable? There have been some psychological studies into whether you can determine someone's intelligence just based on their physical appearance, and studies into what are the physical attributes that make people look more intelligent, even if they actually aren't. Without going too far off topic, I think it is interesting to note one study that I looked into that showed that people could correctly identify smart people based on their faces. They could correctly rank the intelligence of photographs of real human beings just based on looking at their faces, but only in men. The photographs of females, the people were no better at determining their intelligence than just random chance. But there are physical characteristics in men, apparently, that will identify their intelligence. I just thought that was interesting. But whether it is accurate or not, people tend to see physical attractiveness as an indicator of intelligence. There's also a stereotype that goes back quite a long way of intelligent people wearing glasses and people looking smarter by wearing glasses. I don't know if that still holds true today, since wearing glasses is so ubiquitous. Just above a certain age, everyone wears reading glasses pretty much. But it's still a stereotype, so I thought I'd mention it. Something I think is much more effective than wearing glasses is just having a certain accent, or more than that, using certain words. People who are more educated tend to have a sort of wider vocabulary, and they tend to have a less of a regional accent. I don't know how true that is in most countries, but I think it's true for America and in Britain, where your voice kind of it converges on the more sort of typical neutral accent for your country. It's often observed that Americans find English accents to sound intelligent, which may be a contributing factor to my success on YouTube. It certainly didn't hurt, I think. All of those things I've listed so far I would consider kind of superficial attributes that people consider intelligent. That's just, your physical appearance, your voice, your accent, and I think your vocabulary to a limited extent. I mean, people who read more books, sort of that correlates with being intelligent, and then reading books might widen your vocabulary. Having a high level of education. These are things that sort of correlate with intelligence, but aren't necessarily, a good indicator. These things are all great for making a first impression, but it's easy to ruin all of these superficial attributes, but just completely negate them by making a really blatantly false argument. Using faulty logic, making a conclusion that doesn't match your premises. But much more than that, I think people tend to see others as more intelligent when they agree with what they've said. So if you hear someone talking and then they say something really simple, like they're voting for a political party that you don't like, then your impression of them is probably going to go down quite a lot. Your estimation of their intelligence might drop. And something similar could happen if they say they like a book or a film that you thought was bad. On the other hand, if you hear somebody who maybe doesn't even necessarily have all of those superficial attributes that I mentioned before, but they do tend to agree with you on on politics, on certain issues, if they agree with you on your taste in in media, then you might start thinking, wow, this guy's pretty smart. He's saying everything I'm thinking. This person must be at least as smart as I am. Then if they start to talk about an issue that you perhaps are undecided on, or they recommend a film or a book that you've never seen, you're more likely to agree with them on that, or to accept that as you're more likely to believe them or to agree with them even without any other input. So, for instance, if you watch this channel quite a lot and you find yourself agreeing with me on most of the videos I make, and you are kind of undecided on some political issue, say legalizing marijuana or abortion or something, if you're looking for arguments in favor or whatever, you're undecided on a particular topic, if you see me make a video on that topic, you're likely to find that quite persuasive. You might start agreeing with the arguments I've made in that video just because you were in agreement with me before on other points that I've made. That's why people on social media who have a large following are called influencers. That that advertisers rely on that kind of endorsement when they pay people to sponsor products. They're relying on that illusion of reliability. But with all of that said, it is possible to see people who you disagree with as intelligent if they make good arguments, if they show many other signs of being intelligent and they articulate their arguments well, then you still might think of them as an intelligent person, but say, okay, well, they just don't agree with me on this. But looking at all of these attributes here, it's not difficult to see why a lot of people think Donald Trump is stupid, and it's not hard to find a supply of people who are calling him an idiot. And it's hard to know exactly what people mean when they call someone an idiot. They don't always mean that they have a low intelligence. I mean, to call someone an idiot isn't always to say that they are low in intelligence necessarily. It could just mean you don't like the way they conduct themselves, or you could just be saying that they are rude or that they make bad decisions. But I think there are a lot of people who think that Donald Trump is low in intelligence as well as being rude and making bad decisions, and I can see why. Looking at all of the things I've listed, he doesn't present himself as an intellectual. He doesn't use a wide vocabulary. He doesn't make references to works of literature, or he colors his skin and his hair in like a weird way, and it's just altogether the image is just not of. It doesn't match the image most people carry of the sort of the quintessentially intellectual, intelligent person. But regardless, I think that he is quite intelligent, and I wonder how much of his appearance, how much of his sort of superficial attributes are kind of an act or an engineered facade that he thinks will appeal to a certain demographic or just appeal to Americans in general. Or maybe that's just a sense of personal taste that he wants to look like that and to act like that. Just to go a little bit off topic, I have heard that Winston Churchill intentionally dumbed down his speeches. He didn't use his full range of vocabulary and references when addressing the nation, because he wanted everything he said to be understood by everyone. I don't know if that could be what Trump is doing, try to appeal to the everyman and to be sort of the people's president rather than just the president of the elites. To some extent, he seems to be engineering that kind of image. I don't know how much of it is natural and how much of it is put on, though. And to be clear, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a genius. And if you ask me to name 10 people who are alive today who I think are smart, the smartest people I can think of, Donald Trump is not someone who would come to mind. I'm just saying he's not an idiot. I don't think. And I think he's probably more intelligent than many of the people who think he's stupid. In business, he's made billions of dollars, and in politics, he's gained arguably the most powerful position in the world. And we could argue about how how much we really do live in a meritocracy and how much you can be rewarded without being very smart. But I think it's hard to argue that he's managed everything he's managed in his life without some intelligence. Coming back to one of my original points, perhaps Donald Trump's real strength is not in his own intelligence, but in his ability to judge intelligence in others and to delegate tasks to people he knows to be competent. In business, it's probably the most valuable asset you can have. Those valuable skill you can have is to identify competent individuals who you can trust. When you get that high level in any organization, whether it's in business or in government, you're not doing these things yourself. Almost everything is done by other people, and your main responsibility, the main determinant of your success, is determinant a word? The main driving factor of your success is who you are delegating to, the people you choose to do the actual work. And there are going to be a lot of people watching this video who think I'm wrong and who think Trump really is an idiot, and I can understand that, but if you do feel that way, I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say. So please leave a comment, and don't tell me something stupid that Trump has said. Don't go looking for something stupid that he said or done. I'd be interested to hear how you first came to that conclusion. What gave you the impression that he was stupid in the first instance? As far back as you can remember, if you can remember, what was the thing that tipped you off? Because that's kind of what this video is about. On the other hand, if you think that Trump is a genius or that he's just a very smart person, I'd be interested to hear what gave you that impression as well. I suspect that when it gets right down to it, it's just a case of agreeing with him on certain issues or disagreeing with him. But if it goes deeper than that, then I'd love to hear what you have to say. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. And a special extra thanks to Consul 2006, Grant Tout, Mr. Spoon, Bizer Y, David Warren, Mr. Gently Benevolent, Awaiting Input, The Gardening Astronomer, Brian Cobb, Justin Lee, and Anne-Marie Moore for their continued support.